The call for early boarding was a sterile, impersonal echo in the Denver terminal, but for Arthur Finch, it was a quiet relief. At 78 years old, time moved differently. He had been at the gate for over an hour, a portrait of stillness in a tan jacket and worn-out shoes, his hands folded in a posture forged by discipline, not age. To the casual observer, he was just an old man, but a trained eye would notice the subtle stiffness in his left knee, an injury not born of time, but of fire and war. 3 months prior, he had meticulously booked this flight. His granddaughter, the first in the family to wear a uniform since him, was graduating from the U.S. Naval Academy. He would not miss it. That was why a significant portion of his fixed pension had gone towards securing seat 14C. It was not a luxury, it was a necessity. An aisle seat with just enough legroom to appease the ghost of a shrapnel wound from a lifetime ago. He boarded with a quiet thank you, his hand steady on the rail. He settled himself into 14C with practiced care, a sigh of relief escaping his lips. For a man who asked for nothing, that small patch of personal space was everything. He was home, at least for the next 5 hours. But the peace was fleeting. 3 rows ahead, a commotion began. A family, a flustered flight attendant, with a practiced smile and a finger pointed down the aisle, straight toward him. The flight attendant's name tag read Brenda. She approached with a smile that was bright, but offered no warmth. "Excuse me, sir," she began, her tone soft but unyielding. "Are you in 14C? Arthur looked up, his expression placid. "Yes, ma'am." She crouched, bringing herself to his level. "We have a family that was separated during booking. Your seat is part of the only block of 3 where we can place them together." Arthur's brow furrowed almost "I understand, but this is my assigned seat. I booked it specifically for a service-related knee injury." Brenda's smile did not waver. "I understand, sir. We really appreciate your cooperation." The implication was clear. His reason was an inconvenience. Her need was a priority. He glanced at the mother in the aisle, a toddler in her arms, and felt the familiar weight of duty settle on him. "What is the alternative?" he asked, his voice low. She tapped her tablet. "Seat 30 to be middle row." The words landed with a thud. A middle seat, no aisle to lean into. A 5-hour sentence in a vice of pain. "I'm sorry," Arthur said, his voice calm but firm. "I really cannot. My leg will not make it through the flight." Brenda's smile thinned. "Sir, if you choose not to move, we may not be able to depart on time." And there it was, the gentle coercion, the public pressure. He was no longer a passenger with a need. He was an obstacle. The silence around them grew heavy. Arthur could feel the eyes of other passengers, the silent jury rendering its verdict. A selfish old man holding up a mother and her children. His jaw tightened. Slowly, with a dignity that defied the situation, he unbuckled his seatbelt. He rose stiffly, gripping the headrest for balance. "My name is Arthur Finch," he said, his voice controlled, though it carried through the quiet cabin. "Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, retired. I would like it noted that I am giving up a medically necessary seat under pressure." Brenda simply nodded, already motioning the family forward. Arthur gathered his small bag and turned. As he began the long, limping walk down the aisle, he was no longer a person. He was a problem being solved. Seat 32B was a punishment, cramped and tight. It was wedged between a student in headphones and a businessman whose elbow already claimed the armrest. The air was stale. Arthur settled himself with a grimace, his knee protesting sharply. He closed his eyes, a forgotten man in a forgotten row, vanishing into the background noise of the boarding cabin. 3 rows ahead, Eleanor Vance saw everything. A woman in a sharp blazer. She had her laptop open but had not typed a word. She watched the quiet dignity of the old man, the dismissive efficiency of the crew, and the final injustice of his forced relocation. She saw the tension in his hands as he sat hunched in the middle seat, a man trying to make himself smaller. Most people would look away. Most people would murmur a complaint to themselves and move on. But Eleanor was not. Most people, she reached for her phone, not to record or complain on social media, but to act. She messaged a high-level contact in the airline's customer relations. Her message was concise and powerful. Passenger Arthur Finch, veteran, forced from medically necessary seat 14C. Now in 32B on flight 306. Crew dismissive. Please escalate immediately. She pressed send. She did not know if it would work, but in some moments, Silence is a form of consent. This was not one of those moments. In the cockpit, Captain Robert Sterling was running through the final pre-flight checklist. A former Air Force pilot with 23 years of service, he was a man of precision and order. Just as his co-pilot confirmed clearance for takeoff, a red notification lit up his console. Passenger concern flagged by corporate liaison. He tapped the screen. The message was stark: veteran forced from medically necessary seat. Below it was the name of the sender, Eleanor Vance, a public relations board advisor. And then the passenger's name, Arthur Finch. The name hit him like a jolt of turbulence. "Hold the taxi," he commanded, his voice sharp. "Captain," his co-pilot asked. Surprised, Robert was already unbuckling. "Hold position. I will be back." He stepped out of the cockpit and spoke to the lead flight attendant, who moved the passenger from 14C. She pointed toward the back. "He was relocated for a family. He is in 32 bytes." Robert nodded once, his face a mask of resolve. He adjusted the cuffs of his uniform, the gold stripes on his shoulders catching the light, and began to walk. The energy in the cabin shifted the moment the cockpit door opened. A captain emerging before takeoff was never routine. Captain Sterling's presence did not demand attention, it commanded it. He moved with measured steps, his eyes scanning the rows, until they stopped at row 32. He looked down at the old man hunched in the middle seat. Arthur Finch looked up, startled by the sudden shadow, and his eyes widened. The captain stood before him, immaculate uniform, silver wings, and an aura of absolute authority. Then, with no hesitation, Captain Sterling raised his right hand to his temple and rendered a crisp, formal salute. The cabin fell into a profound silence. It was a silence so total you could hear the hum of the auxiliary power unit. Arthur stared, confused, as the captain's voice cut through the stillness, clear and unwavering. "Staff Sergeant Arthur Finch, on behalf of this airline, and as a fellow serviceman, I offer my deepest apologies. You should not have been asked to move," the captain continued, his voice resonating with conviction. "It was an error, and we are going to make it right." He turned to the now pale flight attendant. "Miss Bennett, you will personally escort Staff Sergeant Finch to seat 1A. "Captain?" she stammered. "First class is full." "If 1A is occupied," Robert interrupted, his gaze like steel, "you will ask for a volunteer. If no one volunteers, you will explain that the captain of this aircraft is requesting that seat on behalf of a decorated combat veteran." Arthur, stunned, began to rise, but the captain gently steadied him. As they turned toward the front, the passengers who had ignored him now moved aside with a mixture of shame and respect. When they reached first class, the man in 1A, seeing the scene, stood without being asked. "Sir," he said to Arthur, his voice thick with emotion, "it would be an honor." As Arthur settled into the spacious leather seat, Captain Sterling added, loud enough for the front rows to hear, "If that seat had not been offered, I would have given up my co-pilot's jump seat, and if that was not available, I would have given up mine." The dignity was restored, but the story was not over. From halfway down the aisle, a man in his late 30s stood, his voice shaking. "Staff Sergeant Finch." Arthur turned. "I served under you," the man said, his voice cracking. "Camp Grant, 2006. You saved my life." He could not say more. He just nodded, his chest heaving, and sat down as tears streamed down his face. The cabin was now wrapped in a silence of pure reverence. Captain Sterling picked up the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice filled the plane. "Today, a mistake was made. A man who served this country, who carries the scars of that service, he fought at Quezon. He has worn the uniform longer than most of us have drawn breath. We will not take off while injustice sits in our cabin. If that means this flight is 10 minutes late, then I will take every one of those minutes with pride." He clicked off the mic, and then a sound began. A single pair of hands clapping, then another and another, until a wave of heartfelt applause rolled through the aircraft. It was not for the captain. It was for the old man in seat 1A, who simply sat, head bowed, finally seen. The flight landed smoothly in an hour. As passengers deplaned, many stopped to nod or offer a quiet thank you to Arthur. At baggage claim, his granddaughter, a midshipman in her pressed uniform, dropped her welcome sign and ran to him. "Your knee," she said, pulling back from a fierce hug. "I have had worse." He smiled, and for the first time that day, the smile reached his eyes. A week later, a letter arrived from the airline. Inside was a full refund and a card designating him a lifetime guest of honor. "Just tell us where you are going," it read. "We will get you there." The story, recorded by a passenger, went viral. The salute in 32 bytes became a headline, a symbol of honor reclaimed. 2 weeks later, another envelope arrived. This one bore the seal of the Department of the Army. An archivist, prompted by the news story, had reopened Arthur's personnel file. They had found a long-lost action report from Kisa, February 1968. It documented that Staff Sergeant Finch, his own knee shattered by shrapnel, had single-handedly pulled 6 wounded Marines from a burning vehicle under heavy enemy fire. The report, marked incomplete, had been lost to bureaucracy. At the bottom of the official letter was a handwritten note. "Arthur, I was Corporal Evans in that vehicle. I have known you every day since. I am alive. I have a family. I have a life. All because a Marine who limped worse than me refused to let go. You were never invisible. Not to us." General A. Peterson. Arthur sat with that letter for a long time. He did not change much after that day. He still lived in the same small house and limped to the mailbox. But something inside him had shifted. He held his head a little higher. He no longer felt like a ghost. He had been seen, because sometimes all it takes is one voice, in one moment, to declare that honor does not fade. It just waits for the right moment to rise again.